Hello, everybody. My name is Christina Barea, founder of Five Elements Health, and I have prepared this presentation for the Traditional Medicine Conference hosted in Barcelona, June of 2026, recording it here for everybody's benefit. And the topic of conversation is beyond the diagnosis, reclaiming autonomy in chronic illness, targeted Qigong and physical conditioning. So the purpose of this comes from years of teaching Tai Chi and Qigong to different demographics, and primarily folks who come to the exercises because they already have a diagnosis or trying to find wellness through gentle exercises that supports them while they are healing from whatever diagnosis they may have received. And of course, we understand that healing has to happen from a variety of different avenues, but overall, the collective of it means that for true healing to occur, the environment has to support the prescription. So the reason we arrived at this observation is that clients are coming and they're looking at Qigong as a method for healing, but perhaps overlooking some other areas of their healing journey, which also need to be addressed. And so instead of viewing the body as a series of isolated systems that work independently from each other and focusing on what that singular system needs to do in order to restore homeostasis, this conversation is inviting us to look at the body in a more holistic fashion where every system supports every other, such that the collective unity, the collective wholeness of all the systems comes together to provide the right environment for health and healing. So again, this is just over several decades of experience of observing people that come to Qigong, whether it's a Qigong practice movements or Qigong therapy, Qi mission, looking for in many cases, assistance and support. They've already been to see their physician who's given them a diagnosis and perhaps even some prescriptions, some medication, but not necessarily an entire framework or an entire method of approaching the condition and truly understanding the root causes of disease and finding practical forward methods to be able to address that. And so in here, we're exploring what is possible when we look past the diagnosis. What happens when we look at the entire individual and all of the factors that come together to drive where they are today and what got them to that diagnosis, and using those key observations and those systems to help define a path forward into wholeness and restoring wellness. So in that case, we are moving from a treatment of disease as something that is meant to be managed, something that when we receive the diagnosis or a prescription, we are the passive recipient of either the treatment or the label, and we want to move into more of a place of reclaiming. That in and of itself does one very pivotal thing, and that is the restoration of hope. And we know that hope is very transformational and can provide, and has in many cases, provided miracles for people. When they believe that they truly can heal, then they do heal. And we're asking our patients and clients to move from the perspective of, I have this disease and I'm managing it through prescription and what limited information I've received from my original caregiver or my physician, and working into a place of curiosity, something that opens the mind into understanding what were all of the collective patterns and behaviors that brought me to where I am today, and what is possible when I become an active participant in my healing journey by understanding that my body is not something that has betrayed me, but instead my body is something that it can become a partner, an ally, as I go through the stages of understanding and implementing change. We come to this through the lens of Qigong and Tai Chi. Qigong and Tai Chi being the encompassing practices of the three treasures, which are body, breath, and mind. that together form a holistic and a comprehensive view of our physiology, of our state of being, that includes the body, the breath, and the mind. In this case, the three treasures also describes the physical body, the energetic body, and the mental body. And we know that when we work all three together towards the same goal harmoniously, we can have amplified and expanded results in health and wellness than if we just try to work with one system at a time. However, going back to the observation over a couple of decades of teaching Qigong and treating, is that I notice that clients come in and they have the diagnosis and they come in and maybe their body is insufficient to sustain more intense physical activity at the moment. So Qigong is a way to be able to begin to restore strength. However, they do see results at the beginning because the impact is immediate, right? So they start the practice and within a couple weeks, it's like, oh my goodness, I can already see my breath becoming deeper. I can notice that my heart rate is lowering. I see that I'm more focused. I see that I have more stability and so on. But after several weeks, let's say maybe 12 weeks or so, some of the accelerated impact of those changes begins to subside or hit a plateau. And so inherently within the practice, some of the very best benefits that it has become some of the weaknesses that it has, or it highlights an area that I believe is critical to health and wellness, that is training the physical body. So if we add physical fitness, actually resistance training where we develop the muscles, what can it do to an existing Qigong or Tai Chi practice? And the results is that it actually amplifies it. But first, let's discuss. Everybody knows that Qigong and Tai Chi, or I'm going to assume a lot of people know that Qigong and Tai Chi is very well studied, and the benefits are a multitude. There are many research studies that demonstrate and prove the benefits of practicing mind-body wellness, Qigong and Tai Chi specifically. Those are included in the last couple of slides of this presentation. But in an overview, obviously there's some impact into the nervous system as we're moving slowly. We are working left and right sides of the brain. We're working coordination and balance. So we have a parasympathetic activation and improved vagal tone. That's improved by the deep breathing as the diaphragm extends down into the belly. Reduced cortisol and HPA axis modulation, also as a result of the vagus nerve and the diaphragm working together, moving out of fight or flight and coming into the parasympathetic stage. Enhanced proprioception and bilateral brain engagement, etc. And on the musculoskeletal side and balance, we have increased lower extremity strength and postural stability due to the form and the steps that we're doing. When we move and we put weight, then we are exercising those areas. We have improved joint mobility and fascial hydration. So of course, as we circulate, we're moving synovial fluid and we're bringing circulation into these areas. By doing weight training, or in this case body weight training on the lower part of the body, we are stimulating the piezoelectric size stimulation of the bones, which can lead to the signal to increase bone density. And it helps to reduce falls by 24 to 58% in older adults. Again, we're working areas and angles and tendons and muscles in ways that we don't normally do in our day-to-day activity. And this bilateral exercise engagement of the brain does enhance balance and coordination. Now, what happens on a cellular level for metabolic, cardiovascular, and immune systems? So many wonderful things. We can reduce blood pressure. We can improve the function of the endothelial systems. We can improve insulin sensitivity. Therefore, we can control our diabetes better, or insulin production. We can reduce inflammation, and we can support the immune function. And here's how we're going to do that. Here's some more statistics on Qigong and Tai Chi and health research. Again, we can see some of those researches, the studies published on the last two slides of the presentation. But the missing piece is the muscle. Muscle is our largest metabolic organ, and it is the organ that has the largest volume and mass in the body. That is a significant statistic to understand. If we understand that metabolism, the primary metabolism occurs in the muscle, and that lean muscle mass is where the majority of our protein production and transformation occurs, then we understand how important it is to continuously build and work the muscle. It houses nearly 75% of the body's protein, which the whole entire body uses. It improves insulin sensitivity and glucose regulation from the glutamine that is produced and resistance. And it's a wonderful practice for anybody who's facing diabetes. Muscle fuels the immune system. It's the main producer of glutamine, and it is the primary fuel that immune cells need to build, to create, and differentiate. Skeletal muscle stores 80% of the body's glutamine, and it's concentrated 30 times higher than in the blood. That's how important it is. It releases myokines and anti-inflammatory signals that regulate healing. And there are studies that demonstrate that muscle loss is directly linked to weakened immunity. In other words, less lean muscle mass, weaker immune system. And that is simply because of the relationship of the metabolic function that occurs within the lean muscle tissue. If there is less space or place for it to occur, then there is less production of the components of the immune system that are required to support immune resilience. The risk of mortality is also directly related to the amount and quality of our skeletal muscle, lean muscle. And we know that less muscle mass, as it reduces over time due to sarcopenia, it does actually increase the rate of mortality, and it's usually because of the lack of metabolic function ability within what is left of the muscle. Here we are demonstrating that strength training, and in this case we're only using body weight, we're not using external sources, but strength training plus aerobic activity can provide exponential returns in terms of staving off risk of mortality. So any resistance training, just anything that we do, can be push-ups, it can be sit-ups, it can be yoga, provides about 15% reduction in the risk of all-cause mortality. The best benefit comes when we practice strength training for about 60 minutes a week, and we increase that 15% to 27% reduction. In a cohort of 80,000 adults, and that's a pretty big number to do a study, they found that strength training reduced all-cause mortality by about 23% across the spectrum. That is a significant number and a very compelling reason for all of us to participate in muscle development and strength training activities, maintaining and or building our lean muscle mass. So it's obvious to see that the benefits of strength training and aerobic work are more than either type independently. When they are added together, the returns are exponential. Now, what happens when we add this to Qigong and Tai Chi? We get such an incredible formula. Structural capacity meets refined integration. So we take the exertion of muscle training, and we want to do the entire body, all of the muscle areas. We want to give them a workout to give the signal to create and to sustain the existing muscle mass and or create more muscle mass, or to create better defined muscle mass. And through that, and those are the benefits of strength training: increasing muscle mass, increasing bone density, and that again is by the signal. If the body is under exertion, it gets the signal that it needs to support exertion, therefore it will respond by becoming stronger in those particular areas. It increases metabolic capacity. Again, if we have more space, we have more tissues available, then we have more location, literally, to do metabolic activity. Through the support of the proteins, we become more sensitive to insulin, less needing of external remedies for insulin or for glucose regulation. It becomes the fuel for immunity, again, because the metabolic activity that's happening at a cellular level later becomes into the formalized immune cells. And so this is literally the place, the source of where the immune system can get part of its function. Naturally, stronger muscles increase or improve postural integrity. And we've talked about glucose, enhances connective tissue, and it lowers the risk of mortality. Qigong has so many benefits. We've talked about them at the beginning, but balance, fall prevention, coordination, breath capacity, stress regulation, sleep quality, mood and focus, body awareness, energy regulation, and so much more. When you add the two of these together, we get durable strength, integrated flow, deep vital resilience, sustained autonomy, and body, breath, and mind integration. In our practice in the 5 phases, we go through a 3-layer integrative approach for Qigong training. We address the structural foundation, which is literally talking about the positioning and the alignment of the bones, and talking about the quality of muscle, as well as maintaining that. We overlay that with a 5-element theory, which provides a detailed map of the relationship between the different areas and the factors that influence your daily wellness. And we integrate it fully into a body, breath, and mind practice. On the structural foundation, we are returning this particular area of targeted physical conditioning, which prepares the body for Qigong and for breath work, by saying that it is equally as important to address all of the systems in the body in terms of what they need in order to function optimally and or restore their optimal performance. Again, this perspective is from a response of clients and students coming in with an existing deficiency of some sort, whether it's a condition or it's a rehabilitation or it's been a long time since they've done practice. A large number of folks that come to Qigong classes are people who are looking for a gentle re-entry into physical fitness. And this is one way that we can start to bring it back in. And we'll work with them to condition tissue so that they can communicate more effectively at the cellular level. The advantage, of course, we mentioned is that reduction in fat surrounding lean muscle and or connective tissue fascia means that electrical impulses, aka qi, can also flow more freely and more efficiently and directly through those pathways. Flexible muscles and strong muscles are able to adapt to resistance and change. And we did talk about fascia and the meridians. The observation is that without a sound, strong body to support the energetic and breathwork practice, then our practice only stays on the surface. A stronger body is able to integrate more deeply the practice that is done at the breath and the mind level. But we love the 5 elements. It's a great theory. It's a great way as a clinical roadmap to understand where imbalances might be coming from. For those of you who don't know 5-element theory, it is a relationship grouped into 5 areas that discusses how patterns manifest throughout the body. We're going to keep it into the body. It can go outside. But in the body, we can say that there are these patterned cycles that the 5-element will describe through a series of relationships between organs, emotions, colors, feelings, directions, body parts, etc. And which one is more prominent at any particular time can be related to a particular element. When we understand these relationships, we can then understand how to tailor programs that are more appropriate for an individual based on the factors that they are presenting at that time or the factors that got them to the diagnosis to begin with. So let's just say, for example, somebody comes in with high blood pressure. There's a variety of reasons on why they could have high blood pressure, but a fairly safe way to safe element to look at would be the heart, because fire, because it's related to the heart organ. Alternatively, we could also look at the water element because it's related to the kidney organ, and water and fire balance each other. Again, these are just relationships and every person is unique, but what we do is we begin to look at the patterns that are present constitutionally in each person to give us some insight as to where we can start to tailor the practice for that person, specifically based on what they need to address most readily. At the end of that, or layer 3, once we have the body is primed and we're addressing the physical components of the body and specifically the muscle as the origin of so many metabolic functions which drive our health and wellness, and we've understood which element to integrate first and which practices relate to that element, then we can add on the third layer of body, breath, mind integration, such that the Jing, the Qi, and the Shen are all working collaboratively in one single cohesive, complex relationship towards a particular goal. In this case, we have our body is able to sustain movement and direction that the breath is also driving and participating in, while the mind is focused or visualizing the particular outcome. In this case, all of the three systems or the three treasures, Jing, Qi, Shen, working together, using the nervous system as a bridge, using the mind or the impulses that work through the nervous system as a bridge to connect all three, where the goal of the outcome is coherence of unity of the body and not necessarily relaxation. So we don't necessarily want to arrive at the end of the practice with the whole idea that it's just to relax. At times we actually have to exert in order to restore the homeostasis that we're looking for. But finally, the full integration produces autonomy for the individual who's doing the practice and not a dependency on external sources for restoring harmony. Finally, well, what changes when patients or clients have a framework to work with? So many great things. One is that they have an improved functional capacity and body literacy. So they're beginning to understand how these systems work together more clearly. If somebody arrives with a partial knowledge, that's a great starting point. We're going to enhance that knowledge with additional layers so that they can see how things work together and that the systems of the body are not independent from each other, but rather they are related to each other, support each other, and depend on each other for optimal functioning. It, of course, reduces the reliance on passive interventions where the individual is simply receiving a medication or receiving a treatment or receiving the guidance. Instead, now that they are actively participating in the process of understanding what were the factors that got them to the diagnosis and what are the factors that can be adjusted going forward to either arrive at a termination of the condition, so they've resolved it, and or a active participation in the management of it, in the sense if it's something that can't be reversed. When we work with this kind of framework, what patients consistently report is that they feel like they have agency, right? So now they're in the driver's seat again, and they're feeling like they have control over their lives again, rather than giving it up to an external person who's telling them what to do. It provides coherence in the sense that they understand the relationship between things. And it gives people an identity beyond their actual diagnosis or their illness. So instead of being somebody at this point, oh, I have this or I have that, and not necessarily focusing on the positive outcome of it, it could be this dialogue now begins to be a starting point. It's, oh, I have this, but I'm working towards that. When we put the framework into practice, what we do is take a look at the person, again, through the 5-element lens to understand what were the factors. Their constitutional assessment to understand what were the factors that got them to where they are. So one thing about the 5 elements is that they are actually 5 phases, right? So the elements themselves describe the static relationship of things put together. But when we put in the word phase, what we're implying is that there's a movement of time. so that this element, let's just say it's the fire element that we're looking at, isn't always the fire element. Doesn't mean that a person put into a fire element definition is always going to be in the fire element. It means that there is a possibility for time to pass as well as for things to change. And that is the beauty of the five element, is that things are always changing. Nothing is the same. It's always dynamic. So we have the opportunity that if we started in place A, or fire, then we could move on to earth, which is the element that would come after it in the generative cycle, and not always be stuck in fire. There is, for every single person, the opportunity to explore all of the elements because, well, quite frankly, we are composed of all of the elements. There's no person that only has one element and doesn't have the others. Every single individual has every single element. The phase is what makes it different. Which phase is this person in? Which factors are most highlighted right now that point towards a particular relationship that defines a particular element? There are many, many different possibilities. And so we want to focus on the phase aspect. That means that it is not permanent, it is always changing and can provide a different outcome. So we're designing protocols that are unique to the individual, tracking those outcomes alongside the subjective experience, right? So we are taking biomarkers and metrics at the beginning of a practice, and then we're monitoring them throughout the practice to see what has changed. And again, going back to the aspect of autonomy, in this type of relationship, patients are self-regulating and self-prescribing. They may realize once they understand, hey, I've been doing fire for 12 weeks. Maybe I need to work a little bit on my wood. You know, what is the fire consuming in order to burn brightly? Well, it needs wood. So if you're not familiar with five phases, this can be a little bit confusing. But fortunately, there are many resources to connect with that describe the five phases and the five elements and their relationships. I'm also happy to answer any questions at any time. The idea, though, of course, always is to restore hope and give people an inspiration of what to look for externally beyond the diagnosis, to not look at it as a destination, but rather as a starting point of what can I do about that? What is possible when I start shifting other factors? What is possible about myself, about my life, about my environment, about my situation, when I understand the many factors, how they come together, got to this point, but when I start to change them, what could be next? What is possible next? I want to thank you for listening in on this presentation. I am available to answer any questions, and I'll flash these two resource references slides for people who are watching, and happy to share this slide in PDF form for anybody who might be interested. Again, my name is Christina. I'm at Five Phases. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.